And like Gene would say, good morning. I don't know if he likes to steal that, but he can't be here today. But the flag is dead still. Every morning he says the flag is dead still. Right? The humidity must be high, too, because the windows are all fogged up, you know. I don't know all that weather stuff that he gives, but we want to talk about... We want to mention to our listeners that want to call in on birthdays and anniversaries, you know. We want to always remind you to pray for the military all over the world. They can't hear us from here, but when you have Roy Vicknair and Marie Bergeron on the same show, you really have something, though. We not only have Roy Vicknair this morning, but we have Marie Bergeron. I visited her, and we have a nice tape of her, and she remembers so well. And the two voices of Thibodeau are Roy Vicknair and Marie Bergeron. And it's amazing when you hear these people to know. When you see it, you know, I always want to buy an RV, but we got an RV right here. I love initials, you know. It's time for some kind of change because the Paris Hilton and Benoit and Imus and all those things, we're tired of that. We need some good sports and clean football, huh? We have a special website that our friend William Taylor put up, and I would like the people to know about that. www.KTIB-Memories.com. He said he went back in 2005. He got word that some of the reels and tapes might get ruined due to the heat. So he borrowed them, and he put this together. And it's amazing what he has on there.
I can attest to that. He's got a treasure chest of all the memories of KTIB, including the interviews with all the people that had been at the station over time.
That's right.
On the 50th anniversary, which was a few years ago. And he's got a treasure chest of all the people of the past at KTIB. So he did a wonderful job with that.
All right. I don't think he sleeps. He has, we were talking about Ray Sadie. That's another great name that we have to worry about.
Mr. Ray.
We're going to get him on next month, I think. We're going to talk about him. But whenever you're ready, we have an interview with Marie Bergeron. We can start it. Do you have anything else to say? This is Marie. And Marie, if you're listening and you want to call us later to talk. And Marie Bergeron is the voice of Thibodeau. We remember KTIB, and we want to ask her a few questions. And she won't tell me how old she is, but she was born in the last century. We know that. Marie,
older than I ever thought I would live to.
That's the voice. I would love to know where you were born and something about your family. Tell me where you were born and not when, but where.
I was born on a truck farm in Memphis, Tennessee. It was then in the county, Shelby County. Me and Elvis. No, Elvis was born in Mississippi. But I went to school at Frazier School and then Sacred Heart High School.
That's wonderful.
And Keegan School of Radio, Broadcasting, and Television.
Oh, you went to school?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And what was that, a college of some kind?
It was a private radio school.
Oh, I see.
And my parents were Charles and Callie Servino. My mother died when I was 12. My daddy finished raising me along with my aunt.
You were the only child?
No. I had a brother, John, who was...
He's still living?
No, he passed away. He was 3 years older than I.
Yeah.
He was the smart one. He really was. Very intelligent, very mechanical. He worked for AT&T. And just a lovely person. And I just got the mouth.
The mouth.
He had the brain.
He had the brain and you had the mouth.
And I had the mouth.
What happened to him now?
He died about 3 years ago. He married. He had 3 children. Yeah. I have nieces and nephews.
And where do they live?
They live in Louisville, Kentucky. And they are lovely people.
That's wonderful.
So, and that's, except for a couple of cousins, that's it.
Yeah, of course, the big question is, you went to a school up there for radio broadcasting, and why and how did you end up in Thibodeau, Louisiana?
Al Benzabat Jr., Al Benson, was the manager of KTIB, and his name for me had always been Junior. So he said, Junior, you want to come, Red Skelton, the mean little kid? He said, do you want to come and work at the radio station for me? And that's what I'd always wanted to do.
What station was that?
That was
Well, KTIB, how did you get to know him way down here?
Well, he was working at WMPS in Memphis.
I see, okay.
So our paths crossed up there, and we always liked each other. And his wife was Scotty, and she has since remarried. Now he died.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's me or what, but that happens to so many people in my past who are now gone.
I know.
But he was cutting his backyard on, I think it was Tetro, and had a heart attack and died.
How old was he at the time?
He was in his 40s.
And what's his last name again?
Well, his real name was Benzabat, but they called him Benson.
Benson, huh? I don't know, what year was that?
1953 or 4. I've been here a time or two.
Oh, wow, that's wonderful. Now you have a great history, and of course your voice is just, everybody recognizes Marie Bergeron's voice, you know.
I appreciate that. You know, you grow up with something and you don't really think about it. A friend of my mother's, a lady who was, I guess, 40 years older than I, said to me one time, "You have cultivated that voice." And I guess I did, but I never realized I was doing it.
That's right, In 1954 you came down here, over 50 years ago.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Give me a pause a minute. And when you came down here, Marie, where did you stay? You stayed with somebody, or you got yourself in an apartment?
Well, I started out by getting an apartment, which I couldn't afford, and then I rented a room from Mr. Ed Hebert on Canal Boulevard.
Canal, yeah, I know where that was.
There were 3 of us living there. One was the parish librarian, Peterson, Edith, and then I forget who the other lady was, but there were 3 bedrooms that she rented to us.
I see,
And of course, Miss Hebert's daughter was married to Mr. Dub Gibbons.
Yeah, right. Oh, I see.
Yes, see, it kind of all fits together. And I met Cecil about that time.
I see.
And that's where we dated from.
I see. What was Cecil doing at the time?
He had just gotten out of the service.
I see,
And he was working for his dad.
That's right, What kind of car did you have?
I didn't have a car.
You didn't have a car?
We didn't have a car till after
You came down by bus?
Yes. Which was not pleasant.
No, I'm sure not. It took 3 days to get here, I'm sure.
No, really just 8 hours. It felt like...
Did you know where you were going? I mean, you had no place to go.
And I would say to people, do you know anything about Thibodaux, Louisiana? And they'd shake their head. No. But one of the funniest things was I called the Greyhound bus station in Memphis to see if there was a bus that came here. I mean, I knew nothing.
Nothing like Thibodaux.
And the woman said, it's a little town south of New Orleans. And she told me there was nothing south of New Orleans but the Gulf of Mexico.
She told you that?
Yeah.
What a great story.
But little did she know.
Well, she got you to Homer?
No, she got me to Thibodaux.
All right,
I think she was as surprised.
$15 or $17.
Oh, I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Do you remember what Miss Hebert charged you for your little apartment?
I think I paid her $50 a month, but that included breakfast.
Included breakfast?
Yeah.
She was up every morning until you all got breakfast.
Well, we could have toast or something else. I don't remember what the...
And your salary at the time must have been about that?
$50 a week.
$50 a week, huh?
50.
What were your hours?
Oh, just whatever the hours were.
Whatever he told you.
Yeah.
Well, the station, KTIB, was open only 12 hours a day, 6 to 6 or something?
Well, yeah, I guess it was. It had gone on the air the year before, in 1953.
Yeah.
Ground floor.
Right.
Ground floor. And it was upstairs over the Comet.
Yeah.
Remember the Comet on 5th Street?
5th Street, yes, right, it was.
It was upstairs, and I was hired primarily to do the paperwork.
I see.
And there was a lot of paperwork on radio then.
And advertising and stuff. So you didn't have a mic in your face for a while?
Oh, no.
Oh, I see.
And they were quite undecided about whether they were going to let me talk or not, because the prevailing sentiment in that time was that women did not like to hear other women.
We're going to take a little break from this interview to talk to who's ever here. Roy, do you remember this thing that they wouldn't let women talk on the
No, I guess I don't go that far back.
You were telling me, she said later on that you came the year after her, but you said you were later. You came into Thibodeau,
I came in 1962.
62?
In 1960.
Over here. Roy, do you remember this thing that they wouldn't let women talk on there?
No, I guess I don't go that far back.
You were telling me, she said later on that you came the year after her, but you said you were later. You came into Thibodeau.
I came in 1962.
62?
In 1962. Actually, I've been at KTIB for most of the 60s, 62 to 69.
I see.
I eventually went, Ray Sadie put KHOM on the air at that time, and I didn't follow him right away, but basically most of my time was at KHOM.
Yeah.
And at some point in the early 70s, Laterre Broadcasting, which owned KHOM, bought KTIB. So we were two stations in the family. And in 1994, Ray asked me to come back to KTIB, which I did, and stayed here for about 5 years until 99. In April of 99, I retired.
You lived in
here
Thibodeau.
I am 8 years later.
We're going to talk to you later about your early years. You were born in the last century too, huh?
I hope so.
Yeah, Linda too. Linda was born in the last century. She's looking to remember. Where did you live, Roy?
Well,
you lived in Thibodeau?
So much detail. I really don't want to get into too much of this because we have so much to cover. But when first of all, I married a gal from Vacherie, Linda Wagesback.
Okay, Linda Wagesback.
We moved here to Thibodeau in 1962. We lived on Talbot Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And toward the latter part of the 60s, we moved to what was Walnut Street. I believe it's Tiger Drive now by the fairgrounds.
Yeah, Walnut. Right. Yeah, right.
It was Walnut Street.
Uh-huh.
And then we eventually moved to Houma, where I spent most of our time.
Yeah, right. Sure.
I actually worked at another radio station before I came here.
My time flies by. We're going to play a little bit more of Marie's interview.
You finished high school?
In Memphis,
right?
At Sacred Heart.
That's right.
I went
You
to
just told us
Catholic
that.
school.
That's right. And you had your mother, when you left there, who was still living? Your mother?
My father.
Your father?
No, my mother had died when I was 12.
That's right, you told me that. And your father, what was he doing?
My daddy was a truck farmer.
Truck farmer.
And I told somebody, I said, he raised the best vegetables you ever tasted.
And when you left, you wondered if you'd ever go back to Memphis?
I intended to go back.
Go back, huh?
I intended to go back.
So how long were you down here without transportation? You walked to work every day, I imagine.
Yeah, I did. I guess he
You made friends, and of course when you met Cecil, you had a car.
Well, no, he had no car. We bought, it was the Martins who had the Chevrolet dealership. We bought a car they were getting rid of.
Oh.
The two Martins. And we drove that fast in a day.
$1,500.
I don't remember.
It was, huh? And when you was just you and Mr. What's his name? The man that got you down here, Mr. Vincent. Who was in the studio at the time? Was just two of y'all? Have a two-room studio?
Yeah, but there were other people. There was Jean Bettis, that's a woman, Jean, who sold advertising. Don Gads, who was our engineer.
I see.
He moved to California. Leroy Martin.
Yeah, Leroy Martin.
Leroy Martin, who came in on Saturday and tore the place apart.
Play music?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, right, that's
definitely.
right.
Local radio didn't do much news back then.
Right, exactly.
But that's when it just started.
Yeah, right. That was the only station in Thibodeau.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, definitely.
Definitely.
And he decided on KTIB because of Thibodeau, the word.
I think Mr. Block, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Larson, and I think Joe Silverberg was an owner for a short time, and Joe were involved in selecting the cars.
Owners, I see. That's amazing, huh? And it was a weekend, too? The station still was on every day.
Yes.
Every day. Now, tell me, we have sitting next to us over here, Roy Vicknair. When did you first meet Roy? When did he come into the picture?
Ooh, I think Roy came in, he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think maybe 55.
Oh, yeah?
We go back a long
Soon
way.
after you were here, huh?
Yeah.
Where was Roy coming from? I'll ask him that.
Golden Meadow.
Golden Meadow, huh?
He worked at KLFT.
Oh, he was working at a station before.
It was named for, I think, not Leo Terrio. One, I think it was a terrier, I'm not sure.
Roy was a single person, too, when he came.
No, he was married and had a family.
That's wonderful, huh? Who else was at the station that had actually spoke in the microphone? Who gave the news? Did you have a news?
No
news.
Well, it was rip and read. You ripped it off the news machine.
Right. They had a news machine, AP?
AP. And I'm trying to think of the other people who were there. Jim Swiler came in.
Yeah, Jim Swiler, yeah, right.
Jim is now the head of the Deacon.
I know he was the big deacon in New Orleans, right.
And I guess that was it. Roy, Jim, and Marie.
Did y'all have any interviews? Did you, the people in those days?
Once in a while.
Yeah. They would go out to fires and famous people came to town. I don't know who famous people came out there, not in those days. Huh?
Leroy Martin. Leroy would call us from down the bayou during a hurricane.
I see.
I remember that.
Yeah, right.
And we'd record his little whatever.
You know. Isn't that amazing?
And I remember Hurricane Flossie.
Yeah.
That was the first one I'd ever been through.
Yeah, right.
And Lee Martin, not to be confused with the Leroy. Lee Martin.
Lee Martin, yeah, I remember that.
Was our engineer at that point in time, and he did a lot with the station as far as keeping it on the air.
I see, right.
But I worked Flossie, didn't know what in the world I was doing. And I guess we didn't have another one until Betsy.
Yeah, Betsy, right. Now, everybody's going to want to know, what was the first time that you took a microphone and went on a story or went to talk to somebody? Do you remember?
No.
It took you away from the desk and made you take a microphone.
I know. It had to be... Oh, I know what it was. When the WOW caught on fire.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It was at night, and nobody was around.
So it was Saturday night, wasn't it?
No, it was Halloween night.
Halloween night, right, that's right.
And I took the tape recorder, and I was going to go interview A.J. Narcan, who was the fire chief.
Right.
And I had to figure out how to operate this tape recorder. I mean, I did not know what I was doing. I went out and did a little interview. Then I had to figure out how to get it on the air because nobody was up there. We did have to hold that till the next day.
That was a Saturday night, I believe, wasn't it?
It was Halloween night.
That was the same night that Billy Cannon ran the LSU thing back.
Yes.
Yeah, right, same night, huh?
Yes.
Saturday night.
And
what time of the night was this?
it was early evening. It was 7, 8 o'clock, something like that.
That was your first interview, huh?
And I remember saying to a friend of mine, what scares me is my husband might be in that burning building.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And she said, oh, come on, he's got better sense than that. Well, guess where he was.
He was, didn't he?
He was in the building.
Oh, gosh.
I said, were you scared? He said, well, not till I could feel the hair burning on the back of my neck.
Oh, my goodness. I know. And Quality Pharmacy was below?
Quality Pharmacy,
huh?
Yeah.
You remember all that? And across the street was what? It wasn't a bank.
Peacock Jewelry.
Yeah, that's right, Peacock Jewelry, that's right. Yeah.
And you see, Quality Pharmacy had come from down the street.
Right, that's right, at the corner there.
In the Jeffries Hotel.
Jeffries, huh? Which is the same as it.
I've been around a long time.
I know that. Remember the Green Lantern Cafe?
Oh, I had lunch there every day.
Sure. And Auto Home Garage.
Oh, yeah.
How much you get? 17 cents a gallon for gas? Oh, Mother, you and I remember all those things. Okay, we'll go back to a little bit left on it, but it is amazing what you can remember. That particular night was something else. I don't know where Linda was. She was a little girl in those days, I guess. Well, Roy, you remember that? Where were you?
Well, no, first of all, as I pointed out, Marie's got a little bit confused. I wasn't here in 55.
Yeah, right.
I came in 62, so I don't remember anything Marie was talking about. But you did mention Hurricane Betsy. And in all the years I've been in radio, and that's a long time ago since Betsy, I think that would be the most important experience we had. Collectively, too. Power was out. We had a telephone linked to our transmitter in Shriever, and the engineer, Sam Eaton, I believe, was with us at the time. He kept the station on there. We were doing everything on the telephone, most of the area stations, including New Orleans, were off the air.
Yeah.
Right.
So we stayed on. We were down in the studios down by Canal Boulevard, where the sheriff's office is. And I remember the car wash on Canal Boulevard at the time. It was coming apart, and all of this was flying all over the streets, and transformers were popping and whatnot. So this was quite an experience for us. And we received hundreds of letters in the mail. People just didn't write letters at that time, saying we were their link to the outside world. So that was the most memorable event I had.
They all stayed up all night at the station?
Oh, I'm sure we did. I don't remember all the details.
Were the telephones working? Could you call your wife?
No, I don't think link to the outside world. So that was the most memorable event I had.
They all stayed up all night at the station?
Oh, I'm sure we did. I don't remember all the details.
Were the telephones working? Could you call your wife?
No, I don't think. My wife I had my wife and young children out of town for that. But that brings back big memories, and what also brings back big memories is my early years at KTIB here, and my years at KHOM in the 70s and 80s. We always would broadcast from the Thibodeau Fireman's Fair. That was a huge event. Fact is, I'm holding. I got this out my collectibles. I'm holding here something I got from Lee Martin, who was a beloved member of the department for so many years, and it was a historian. Lee put out this booklet, Century of Service, Thibodeau Fire Department, 1874-1974. This is in pristine condition. He's got pictures from the early years in the department, some of the fires they had covered, and every time we would do the fair broadcast, Lee would always come up to our mobile studios and would always give us a tidbit of history of the department. And it's such a colorful history, and such a unique fire department. That's one of the big memories that I remember from KTIB. The other thing, we had this promotion that we did every summer. We had the KTIB barbecue cookout. You would send in your name, and we'd pick a name at random, and we would go out to your house, and you could invite 12 guests. We'd barbecue hamburgers and sausage and whatnot, and drink beer and soft drinks. I look back, I don't know how I did that. I always had help with the people back then. I think Jim Swaller was with us in early years. He might have come with us, and there are so many names I remember from the early years. Jim and Dan, we call him Danny Barn at the time. Dan Barn. Greg Dumas, who later went to the competition. In fact, I heard Greg on the interview. Gene Richard had Greg on not too long ago. So I remember all these guys. And in the later years, Roy Vicknair, he also did sports, was the engineer. Jimmy Cole, and over the years. And then I came back in the 90s. I worked with Darren Font, Greg LaRose, and David Salzman. He was spectacular. He was with me.
Well, Roy, we're just fascinated by how you remember all these names and all these people.
So many people have crossed my path over the years, so I've forgotten a lot of them, but some stand out. It was radio was different back in those days. We had a humongous staff. You can't do that anymore.
No.
But radio was just it was a community event, and I'm glad to see we got KTIB up and running again, and we can establish it.
Well, what kind of music schedule did you have? You had news every hour?
I think we did. Some of the details of that are a little fuzzy, but yeah, we did. By the time I came, we were doing news on some regular basis. Marie, of course, eventually got into news and was doing the news. I remember Janice Lassang, I think, was doing news when I first came. Janice was here in the 60s. I'm not quite sure for how long, but I remember Janice. And of course, when that was a big thing, doing news. And when I went to KHOM, that was Ray that was one of the first standalone FM stations in the state.
Right.
One of the first standalone. That was quite a big gamble, because FM back in the late 60s was around, but most people didn't have FM radio.
No, that's right.
But eventually FM caught on tremendously in the 70s, and we emphasized news along with KTIB. We were sister stations.
Roy, this is a great fascination, and of course, like I told you about Marie's voice, your voice is so unique Did you ever have a...
No, I never had any formal training. My voice is not exactly at its best right now. I'm a bit hoarse.
We're going to go back to Marie just for one little part where she interviews Eddie St. Marie.
Oh,
you remember Eddie St. Marie?
This is a classic.
What do you think is your most unusual interview? Were you specifically sent out to interview a famous person or a doctor or some tragedy?
I went out to interview Eddie St. Marie. And the reason, and he was always interested.
I know.
And the reason I went to interview him was there was a rumor around town about the green monster in the Bruley Swamp. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
So I went over there and I asked whoever was running the place, because the sheriff was really there. And he said, "Oh, you have to talk to the sheriff about that." Olin Terry.
Olin Terry, yeah,
Terry.
Oh, yeah.
And so I waited and I talked to Eddie and I said, "Now look, you got to tell me about this green monster, because my son's class was going to go out there." And I told him, I said, "You're not going to the Bruley Swamps without your mama, you know." It was Mr. Taylor from Thibodeau High. So anyway, I went to interview Eddie. Well, let me tell you, I didn't know what I had. So I talked to Anna Slade, who did news for us in Terrebonne Parish. I said, "Anna, do I have anything? Listen to this with me." She said, "Oh, God, put it on right now."
Yeah.
Because Eddie was such a show.
Yeah, it was, yeah, sure.
It was hilarious. But I didn't want to make fun of the man.
No.
You know, I wanted to treat it well.
Yeah, right, I'm sure.
And Raymond called me. He said, "Marie," Raymond said,
Yeah.
"How did you get that?" I said, "I walked in and asked for it." See, if you just ask,
I know.
you'd be amazed.
You're a good reporter. That's what you have to do. You have to ask. If you say no, it's no. Huh?
Yeah.
That's marvelous.
Well, unless you can talk them into it.
Let's talk about location a little bit. You left, it was up above, what you said it was, above the common
Above
office?
the common office.
Now, where did it go from there? To Canal Street?
Yes, and went to what was then the First Federal Building.
Right.
Yeah, which was a lovely location.
It was, yeah.
We did Betsy from there.
And you had the clock up there. Everybody talks about the clock. Was that after that?
That was First Federal.
First Federal, I see, huh?
Yeah.
First Federal went in there with you, or
They went in there before us.
before us, and you had the whole building, KTIB?
No. First Federal had the whole building. The Daramies had a section.
Oh, that's
the
right.
lawyers.
Yeah, right.
And then we had a small portion.
Yeah, I remember that. Johnny and I did something there one Christmas. I played the piano and Johnny helped on you.
Yes,
You remember all that.
I do remember
Now, tell me,
that.
how did Roy Vicknair come in here, come in all of this? Well, you told me that about Roy Vicknair. What about Ray Sadie?
Ray Sadie came to work at KTIB after the manager, Hal Benson, died.
I see.
And Raymond was a salesman.
I see.
So they, Don Gatz left, and they made Raymond the manager.
I see. Oh.
And like Raymond said, he really shouldn't have had that title, because he didn't know what he was doing either.
You
He
still had the
just
same
kinda
engineer?
learned.
Yeah, you learned
No,
that you
Don went to California,
Yeah.
and Sam Eaton, who had worked with Raymond somewhere else,
Yeah.
came in as our engineer.
I see.
And of course, Lee Martin was always there,
Yeah, I'm sure.
because he worked for Mr. Blanc.
And what were your hours then? When you moved to Canal Street, what were your hours?
I don't remember if we were daylight only. I think we were.
Yeah.
Your first months or your first days at KTIB at Canal Street?
I can't really say I remember. I can't tell you how many hours I worked. I eventually wound up on the morning shift and stayed in that position until I left in 1969 and went to KHOM, and I ultimately got the morning shift and stayed with that until I came here in 1994 and did the morning shift here. Marie did the interview program. We called it Dialogue. We had another. I have to stop and think. We had another interview show in Homer's Radio Roundtable, but that was a different station. Marie had just about everybody and their brother and sister on the show, and that was one of the big. And I'm glad to see you're continuing with the tradition here with Jean Richaud, who does a great job. I'm living in LaPlace now. I moved from Homer in 2003. Thought I would never leave, but moved to LaPlace. And when I go out walking in the morning, I often put the station on and hear Gene.
Pick it up well?
It comes in fairly well.
We're going to take a little break now. We'll come back and we're about finished with Marie. Maria, we're going to call you in a few minutes and let you say a few words on the air.
Well, I've been listening. I never realized I had such a thick Southern accent, but I really did.
It's cultivated, Marie. It's cultivated. That interview with Eddie St. Marie really stuck in your mind, didn't it?
Oh, yes, it did. We had a copy of it somewhere, but I don't know where it is now.
Oh, Marie,
I guess it's been erased.
Here's Roy.
I wish you could have. I wish we had that interview because I heard that interview with St. Marie. It was a classic.
Yeah, I had saved all of that in my desk. You know, that was the times when we really didn't know what we were doing, but somehow it came out all right.
I'm sure.
Marie, did that interview involve Hurricane Betsy with Sheriff St. Marie? I'm trying.
No. That interview, and I'll give someone else some credit.
Sheriff St. Marie, I'm trying.
No. That interview, and I'll give someone else some credit. My son was in high school, and he told me they were going to the Bruley Swamp because people had been frightened by a monster.
Uh-huh.
When you figure your teenager telling you something like that, of course I didn't believe it. And so I went to the sheriff's office and asked Olin Terry if he could tell me about this monster. And he said, oh, no, you have to talk to the sheriff. So the sheriff's office used to be, if you can believe this, in the courthouse, and people sat in that big center hall. So I sat there until Eddie appeared. And when he did, I said, well, I want to ask you about the Bruley monster. And he said, well, come in my office. And out of that came this interview.
Well,
and when I tell you, I did not know what I had. I'm not kidding.
Marie, I'm just trying to remember that. Did the sheriff say something about he had a flashlight in his mouth and he was in the swamp?
Oh, that was the hurricane. Oh. He and Dick Guidry fell in the bayou, or they told it. They got blown into the bayou.
Blown into the bayou. I remember that.
That was Betsy, because they came up that afternoon, and who else was here? The governor, I think? Yeah, John McKibben.
Yeah.
And we stayed on the air late because we had all these dignitaries telling us about the storm that we had just lived through.
Marie, did Eddie St. Marie believe that a green monster was out there?
I'm not sure. Were you ever sure about Eddie?
You didn't interview the green monster.
I didn't get to interview the monster, no.
You've been around enough monsters, huh?
Yeah, that's true.
It's so wonderful to hear Marie Bergeron and Roy Vicknair's voices. Go ahead, Roy. You got anything else to ask her?
Well, I'm glad you clarified the part about. I was getting confused what interview that was with Eddie St. Marie. I know we had a number of them, and it was just incredible. And I hope Linda can discover that she really has these tapes, and hopefully maybe we could get that on the Oldies website. It's something you want to download, and it's a keeper, really.
Wonderful. I want to ask Roy one more thing. Since you had such a wonderful interview with Eddie St. Marie, Roy, did you ever go out like that and interview somebody famous?
Well, I wasn't doing news per se, but I do remember when we had the fair broadcast. Well, we did the Fireman's Fair, and in Homer we did Lanyap on the Bayou, and we did all the big fairs. And I do remember Governor McKibben, talking to him.
And do you remember Pete Fountain?
Pete Fountain, yeah. I have a picture of Jim Swile and Pete Fountain, and the three of us were at Nichols for the Nichols Artist and Lecture Series.
Oh, I see.
That was Pete in his young days. Of course, we were all a lot younger then. But I'm remembering Governor McKibben. I was at the fair, and I was drinking the beer, and he took the beer from me, and he said, I'm going to drink from your beer. You know, he took a sip out of my beer and gave it back to me. He said, you still want to drink the beer? I remember Senator Bennett Johnston, Kathleen Blanco, when she was at the fair. I remember talking to her. I think that's when I bumped into the big people at the fair. So they all lanyap on the Bayou, the Thibodeau Fireman's Fair. A lot of the political figures would come down here. This is a big event for them.
Right.
And really enjoyed the fairs. Lanyap on the Bayou in Chauvin was just a classic. That was always wonderful.
Well, Kathleen Babineau Blanco, I met when she was the head of the census for the state of Louisiana, which has been, I guess, a good 30 years ago.
Right.
And we liked each other right away. You know, she's been a joy to know. And by and large, I think has been a pretty good governor. Of course, who knew how to deal with the Katrina?
Katrina, that's right. I bet she's some happy woman today, though.
I bet she is.
Over and she got a $29 billion.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and they finally, since she's leaving office, they're finally going to listen to her.
That's right. That's right.
That's about right, Marie?
Yep.
Marie, you're not thinking about running for anything, huh?
No, thank
Except
you.
the hills, running for. Roy Vicknair thinking about running for mayor of La Plaza.
I don't think.
No. Or chief of police, maybe?
Yeah. No.
Or Green Monster?
No.
I
lived in Terrebonne and Lafourche for most of my adult life, and lived here in Thibodeau in the '60s before we moved to Houma. Never thought I would leave Houma, but we decided to move to La Plaza. I have two of my three daughters on La Plaza. Of course, we've got the grandkids, so they keep me busy. So we're now on La Plaza, but it's always great coming back to Thibodeau and coming back to Houma. The area has grown in leaps and bounds, as everyone knows. Just in the last 4 years.
So, Roy, let me ask
Gibbens, I got to tell you, I never thought that you would be interviewing me. Gibbens was one of our all-time most faithful listeners, both at KTIB and KHOM. And
June the 3rd?
we stayed in contact over a period of time. And you're gonna mention June the 3rd, so I'll let you tell the story.
No, you tell it.
No.
Oh, you went June the 3rd. I was at Grand Isle. I guess I was in the 70s. And when were you at?
I think it started in the
30 years ago. June the 3rd. I called him from Grand Isle, and I said, "Do you know what today is? Today is the day that Billy Joe McAllister threw something off the Tallahatchie Bridge." The Ode to Billy Joe. Remember that song?
And Gibbons at the time said, "Now I'm going to call you and remind you of June the 3rd for the rest of your life." And of course, he called me, or I would call him. Basically,
one time
Gibbons
from Las
started
Vegas.
calling me, and then at some point I'd call him. So I retired in '99. I thought I wouldn't hear from Gibbons anymore, but he kept track of me. He called me in Houma. When I moved to La Plaza, he called me in La Plaza to remind me it was June the 3rd. And that's how I connected with this program. He said, "Why don't you come up? Gene Richard is going to be off today, and I'm going to interview Marie, and why don't you come up?" And
it's worked out fine. Yeah. Wonderful. I'm so glad to see you.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure. It brings back a lot of memories at this place. Well, I'm looking at this new board. That's the console. That's really nice. That's really nice. That's an improvement. I like how you can bring people on the air or on the phone, and y'all doing a good job. You got a lot of challenging times ahead. You've been through a lot, and hopefully you'll go in the right direction. And Gene Richard, if he's listening, he said he might try to be listening. He's doing a great job on the show, too.
He sure is. The whole thing's great. It's a pleasure to turn it on every morning.
That I want to thank people for listening to me all those years. And I realize now, when I decided to come to Thibodeau, that was the smartest thing I ever did. And because people surround you with love and warmth. You know, I've interviewed some pretty strange characters, but well, a lot of them were elected officials. But anyway, you know, I go back and think about how close I came to danger many times. Someone always protected me. You could say it was the good Lord. You could say it was people like Roy Vicknair and Raymond Sadie.
Eddie St. Marie.
And Eddie St. Marie. But I tell you, it has been a true pleasure and a love. And I remember being absolutely so frightened that I could barely get the words out. Yes,
Marie,
indeed.
I have to ask you this question. Do you still have a scanner?
Yes, I do. Do I use it? No, but I may.
I had seen Marie after I retired and after she had retired, and I was at her house, and I said, I heard the scanner go off, and I said, Marie, what do you have this on for? She says, well, I've had it on all these years. It's kind of like a habit. She always has, listen what's going on the police scanner. I guess.
Yeah, but now with cell phones, you don't get as much good stuff as you used
No, you don't.
Yeah, well, my son worked there over 20 years.
Right.
And they were good for him and good to him. That was a good situation. They came into the area, and I met Dan Domang, who I don't think is with him anymore. But I met Dan, and from there became a whole nother part of my life. My son went to work for him. Donovan Gretna, who's now with the Heart Hospital in Lafayette, Donovan said, I want to introduce your son to my sister-in-law, and they married. So I feel a very close tie to Acadian Ambulance. And they used to be, and I guess they still are, just at the top of the heap. They demanded excellence from their people, and I hope they still do. The people in Thibodaux make you feel welcome, yeah.
Well, it's been a wonderful hour, and we so appreciate you, Marie, and Roy being with us and bringing back those memories. And this is not the last time now.
Okay.
Sometime we're going to have you back. We're going to get Ray Sadie. We're going to try to get Leroy up here.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
And the Lois is in Decatur, Tennessee, where Roy's going to leave and go up there and fill up his tank at 225.
What's that?
Decatur, Tennessee.
And how much?
At 225.
Oh, yeah.
Marie will go back to Tennessee with you.
That's right.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much gas we'll use going up there for that.
Thank you all so much for being with us today. It's been wonderful.